Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today. Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio, audio, no pictures live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the hysteria that's been doing the rounds in Australia recently about supposed domestic violence against women. Now, it's quite a nuanced picture, so I'll be touching on a number of issues here, but suffice to say that it's been tightly choreographed, tightly scripted, and quite clearly it's a predetermined, preset bit of drama. You've got to wonder whether they do false flags on this sort of stuff. It's really, it is so choreographed that you just have to, that you can't do anything other than look at it with the greatest suspicion. Now, a few things here, I think rather like, climate change, where they super cherry pick a statistic and use that to gin things up. But the poster child issue or poster child example that they're using at the moment just happens to be two white women. I'm not exactly sure whether their partners were white, but they seem to be a little bit murky and obscure on that. But they certainly are implying it or suggesting it. And the media, it's media circus, and they're if say a woman is supposedly murdered at or dies as a result of some sort of a physical drama, later on dies, then they're ginning this up and running it as feverishly running it as a headline story. And then once they that starts to lose momentum, they'll then find a relative or a mother or somebody who knows or knew the person, and then they'll interview them for 5 minutes and get them to cry and get and it's the violence by Hitler, and it's all very emotionally ginned up, but very skinny on facts, as these things, of course, have to be if you're going to run an ideological campaign like this. The purpose, of course, isn't to protect women; it's to control men, particularly white men. That's the central purpose of this. And that feeds, in very handily with the globalist project. Let's have a look. Let's have a little look at some of this now. Out of the alleged 27 deaths of women by intimate partners. Now, the intimate partners thing is in itself interesting, because the inference is all the propaganda says it's white men, and middle class white men at that. It's not the career criminal white men or drug addicted, low IQ white men living in the projects. No. It's only well dressed middle class white men in middle class suburbs in nice houses with well dressed wives and this sort of. It's them. They're the ones that do it, which of course is beyond absurd and fantastic. But anyway, the middle class white male is not only the class enemy, but he's also the enemy of the globalist ideological project, because the middle class white male will want things like accountable government and independent courts and due legal process, all of which are obstacles to the globalist ideological project, all of which must be got rid of. The only real supporters and adherents to democracy and the rule of law are straight white males, middle class in particular. So that's why they got to go. They got to be controlled and diminished in society and detached from society and so on. So this is all very much part of that wider project. So out of the 27 alleged deaths of women by intimate partners, either current or former, they don't break it down into, for example, the very brutal, cruel lesbian relationships. That doesn't get a gig. Whether it's by, say, a brother or a injuries after an argument with another male relative, cousin or something. None of that's, or they don't separate out sort of a drug deal that went bad and a number of people were killed. Also, they stretch it into, if the man's driving the car and the car gets in an accident, she dies, then it's kind of intimate partner violence. So they stretch and extend it pretty substantially in order to gin up the numbers. Nonetheless, out of the 27 supposed deaths, 2, as I understand it, this is my understanding, 2 were with white women, and the inference is white men are the perpetrators here, but it's a little bit unclear actually. But anyway, let's assume they are for the moment. So out of 27, only two are white men. Now that alone would tell you that we're down to less than 10%. So that would suggest that there are other categories that must be much bigger than this. But they focused only on these two, just on all the rest. Nah, forget about them. There are these two because both the women are white. Now that would suggest to me that not only in the other 25 cases that it's not white men involved or not straight white men involved, then or not white women for that matter, then why are they focusing only on these two white women? Let's have a look at them to just see how typical they are. Now, in one case, this is in a very, very poor rural area where white people are not in the majority, by the way. These are people that live in sort of the housing projects. The woman was or had an intimate relationship with a career criminal who was constantly in and out of prison and so on. So as I understand it, there were drugs involved. She'd been looking after some money for him while he was in prison. She'd blown the money. He was quite understandably upset when he came out and said, well, I want that money. Sorry, I've spent it. So there was all sorts of discord. Then again, the guy's a fucking career criminal. I don't think he's ever had a job in his life. You know, neither is she. So it's we're talking people at the bottom, arse end of society, you know, hanging out again, the career criminal thing, drugs and intergenerational unemployment, housing projects. We're doing all of that. So we're not talking typical people here. These are not everyday people. Now these people exist for sure, but they exist in environments and areas where crime of every description is off the charts. So to try and point this out is look at that domestic. Now the woman I'm not exactly sure of the circumstance of how he died, but the claim in the media as well that there was already an apprehended violence order against this guy who is alleged to have either contributed to or committed in some way the death or led to the death of the woman. So the argument is, well, what do we do to keep women safe? We have to. We must do something. Something must be done to keep women safe. Hysterical. Ah! Now the text of if you look at the media coverage, the delivery of the story is very much something that's pitched at middle-class white women. They're like, look at this. Look at the danger that's lurking just around the corner for you middle-class white women. Have you ever sort of had an association with a violent man? Well, no. Have you ever, has a man ever been violent? Well, no. Has your husband or whatever been violent? No. Has your brothers or father? No. But they could be. It might happen to you. The cannibals could come along and eat you tomorrow. Hitler could personally come around. So it's almost like they're trying to terrify middle-class white women for something that these women have never experienced and never know. These women don't live in financially difficult circumstance. They don't live in situations of high crime areas. They don't have exposure to any of that. They're around well-behaved, civilized men. Many of them having had domineering mothers and so on. Those are the people that they're around. So they're the least likely statistically and by any and all measures, they're least likely to ever encounter this sort of thing, or even to see it, or even to come up close to it, unless they are social workers or something. But nonetheless, the media campaign seems to be directed at those sort of women. Now, I remember, women I've known, middle-class women, who are very strange, even though they've never come across the violence, never known it, don't know anyone who has. They have an unusually sort of paranoid attitude. Or if my husband ever raises his hand to me, he only has to raise his hand once, just once, and that's it. Oh. And so they have this quite hysterical, delusional, sort of nightmarish concept of it, that it's whether they know nothing about it, never come across it, never experienced it, but it can always be there, just around the corner, just under the bed, just in the closet. So it's a strange mentality, and I've noticed quite a few middle-class women have had this. And it seems that this propaganda campaign gins up those fears, the monster under the bed type fear. So, but anyway, coming back to the issue here. So both of these, as I understand it, both of these deaths of white women, and they focus particularly on one, which again, the career criminal boyfriend and the drug deal arguments and so on. Which they skip around. You have to sort of drill down quite a way to find this. So the inference, a bit like the Black Lives Matter thing, that the American cops just randomly sort of walk around shooting black people. Now, when you look at the stats, only 9 deaths of unarmed black people occurred, and that's when the black guy refused to stop and was running away. And even shots were fired over the head. So it'd be very, very difficult to try and gin up an accurate, reliable, dependable story that the American cops run around shooting unarmed black people. They don't. And statistically, it's in the whole of the United States, I think 9 or 10 black people were shot by cops. Unarmed black people were shot by cops. And again, they're running away and don't respond to warning shots and so on. The vast majority of black people being shot are them, gangs shooting each other, which for some reason never seems to get a decent mention. I mean, why isn't murder and death sort of a bad thing anyway? I mean, why is it only bad if it happens in one situation but not another? And why do they tell so many lies about what? And domestic violence is the same. It's a completely manufactured sort of ideological hysteria. Does it happen? Well, sure. But of the 27, only 2 were white, and both of those were in very atypical type situations. Again, career criminals and so on. So, I mean, how many career criminals are there in the population? Not very many. How many also leave a chunk of money with the girlfriend to look after, and she spends it all? There's a whole lot of things feeding into this. The idea that they're projecting is that men are just walking around rando murdering women, which of course is a grotesque untruth. Not even remotely true, yet no one's checking it. There's no fact checking that's going against it. There's not a single media outlet that's pointing out the fallacy of the points they're putting forward and the absurdity of the propaganda. There's no politician, there's no media outlet, nothing. So it all goes through to the public without any sort of sensible filter. So anyway, what are the politicians? We need to look at politicians' response here. I've known a number of political advisors to politicians, and if it's a male politician, or even if it's a female one, but particularly if it's a male politician, if their poll numbers, and they're constantly doing polls, if their poll numbers are dropping amongst women voters, the absolute first go-to for that male politician, if his numbers are dropping amongst female voters, the first go-to is to say he's going to do something to protect women from other men. For some reason, that is the go-to. That is the guaranteed poll boost amongst women voters. All those bad men trying to get you along, a big fucking hairy chested. I'm going to protect you from those evil men. And the poll boost straight away. Women think, oh, big tough man, hairy chested man. He's going to beat up all those other men for me. Now, a terrible indictment of the woman voter, I think that. But it nonetheless gives the poll boost. These political advisors tell me guaranteed poll boost, guaranteed. Women voters love this sort of thing. And so the male politicians do it. Do the male politicians and their advisors know it's all bullshit about violence against women? Of course they do. But who gives a fuck? We're talking about politics here. And if it'll get me elected, then why should I give a fuck about accuracy, truth, facts, and, all that sort of stuff? So there's a very cynical thing. So in Australia, there's a couple of governments regional and federal that are not doing so good with women in the polls. Their numbers are dropping. Now, at the moment they decide or realise that the numbers drop, suddenly, just right on cue, this violence against women sort of initiatives come out. And there are documentaries and it all comes out absolutely, perfectly choreographed and synchronized. I mean, you don't get that if it's natural and organic. This was all pre-arranged and they were just waiting for an unfortunate event to take place so they could spin off and everything around that. And again, it's so choreographed, it just makes you wonder whether it was a setup. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but gee, the choreography and the timing and the synchronizing, fuck. So this is what's going. So what are they going to do? Well, there are already laws about violence and assault and everything. There's plenty of laws that exist on the books, but all of which can be used to prosecute people for assault or murder, as the case may be. So how can they turn this into a special women's issue, special boutique women's issue, so they can make political capital out of it, and that the gender hustlers and grifters can just put another dividing line between the genders and the power politics of gender, and the feminists are of course all into. It's the imbalance of power. It's the lack of respect. It's Hitler. And but no one's got anything even approaching a supposed answer for it. And when you're talking about career criminals in the projects and drugs and all this sort of thing, that's a pretty high risk lifestyle as far as I'm aware, and it's going to at times lead to pretty unfortunate outcomes. So what is the thing now? So the politicians have got a couple of things. Firstly is more control of men. Men are the problem. Men are the evil Hitler problem that we have to control. And me, the straight white male, hairy-chested politician, I'm just such a tough guy. I'm going to protect those little women. Now, to me, that's the bigotry below expectations straight away out of there. What you mean, the women who are completely equal are the ones that you big tough man is going to protect. Don't necessarily follow the logic in that. Nonetheless, two things they're talking about doing. One is tightening up bail conditions. So if a man is eligible for bail or from early release or day release or some sort of process from the prison system, and he has some sort of apprehended violence order against him, that he can be prevented from accessing that day release scheme, or that it's heavily conditional. That well, hold on, that's my house, that's where I live. But you can't go there because she says you're violent. I mean, is that? Do we want that sort of arbitrary application? And what sort of evidence? So they're saying that she doesn't have to meet any evidence bar, none, zip, zero, zilch. No, she can just say it. All she has to do is allege it. And then that evidence bar, that zero evidence bar, then becomes a controlling factor on where the man can go, whether he can actually leave prison or not. So in a due legal process sense, that's terrible. Why would anybody want a reduction in due legal process? Now, the man, of course, can appeal it at his own time and expense. He's not going to get legal aid for that. So he has to find the time and the money to appeal in a court where he will have a very high evidence bar to meet, an almost impossible evidence bar to meet, to prove that her allegations are false. And if she's already stolen his money and spent it, she's got every reason to want to prevent him from getting out of prison. So a whole lot of issues there with that. The other thing is to even lower the bar for getting an apprehended violence order. So you don't have to turn up at court and sign a document. You can just phone it in, which I've mentioned in another video, or just send something on email, and that's it. You're good to go. And that's sort of all I wanted to say. So the idea is, well, let's remove all evidence requirements, because look, it's a good cause. Because we're doing it to protect women from evil fucking men, those misogynist fucking patriarchy and those oppressors. We have to control them to protect the little woman. Now, if this is the lengths we have to go to, if this is what protection involves, well, fuck due legal process, fuck the rules of evidence, fuck the liberty of the individual. Fuck that. Yeah, if that's the thing, then we go, well, look at this woman from this retarded woman from the housing projects that stole some guy's money. It's her that we have to protect. No. We need to accept that people living high risk lifestyles have these sort of outcomes. Is it a desirable outcome? We'd rather it didn't happen, of course. But that's what happens in a high risk lifestyle. These things can and do happen, albeit they unfortunate. So this is what's been going. We need to understand, though, the political nature of this, the ideological nature of it, and that every time these things happen, we move one further step away from the rule of law, away from due legal process. We move closer and closer to ideological law. And in that sense, it's an unmitigated disaster. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.